Hello everybody. If you don't already know me, my name is Antonio Robinson. I'm currently in college as a pre-PA student, and I work part-time as an EMT. I make YouTube videos as well, but in my time making YouTube videos, I haven't really taught that much about my EMS journey, my EMT journey, and that's because over the past 6 months have been like my introductory phase. I've been learning a lot, I've been experiencing a lot, and I really haven't had wanted to talk about it yet because I've just tried to sponge, absorb all the knowledge, learn more, and just actually be in the field before I actually make videos and talk about my experience in emergency medical services and my experiences as an EMT. I have 6 months of experience. I've clocked over 700 hours on an ambulance now. I'm like, alright, I think I have enough, experience that I actually make some videos and talk about my experience so far. I've talked to, of course, I've talked to my friends and my family about some of my calls, some of my stories I've had so far, but I've never really talked to the YouTube channel. And I have a lot of people that are actually genuinely interested in wanting to start a career as an EMT or use it as a stepping stone to a future career. So I'm like, I'm gonna start talking more about my experience in emergency medical services more on my channel. But my most common question is, give me your craziest stories, tell me about your craziest calls. And, I figured I'll make a video talking about my 3 craziest calls so far in my first 6 months as an EMT. In emergency medical services, there's 2 main types of people. There's a white cloud, where when you get 911 calls, your calls are of course they're emergencies, but they're simpler emergencies, it's easier to handle, it's not as traumatic and stuff like that. And then there's a black cloud, and those people have the crazy calls, traumatic calls, all types of just calls. They're those are the type of calls you see in movies all the time, but they can impact your mental health and they do numbers to you. Thankfully, so far in my first 6 months, I've been a severe white cloud. But I do have a couple crazy stories, but again, I haven't had too many crazy traumas. I've had a couple interesting medical calls, but again, nothing too crazy on the medical call side. So I'll tell you my crazy story so far in my first 6 months. To the average person, these calls are going to be insane, these calls are going to be pretty crazy, but then to the average person in EMS, you're like, oh, that's a pretty average day. So, also, I work multiple jobs in multiple different counties, so, and plus I'm not going to be mentioning any HIPAA information, no, not the patients, no information about the patient or anything, so we can start off with a pretty crazy call. This call was what was supposed to be my first cardiac arrest. We just finished up a call, and as we were leaving the hospital, we get a call over the radio, and our unit is getting sent to a different call. We have a minor unconscious and not breathing. My adrenaline kicks in. I'm like, unconscious, not breathing? You know what that sounds like to me? Cardiac arrest. This would be my first cardiac arrest, and it's a kid, which is even scarier, because cardiac arrest alone is scary, but if any call involving a kid, you could ask anyone in EMS, any call involving a kid is an extra, oh, the pressure is on, I gotta lock in. But they have a kid in cardiac arrest, so I'm like, oh my gosh, what, this is my first cardiac arrest call. Cardiac arrest call, it's a kid. I'm actually okay, starting to stress. Paramedic, I'm with you, calm down, follow my lead, fire's gonna be there, we're gonna get through it. So anyways, we're going fast to the scene. When it's a cardiac arrest, the sooner you can start CPR, the better outcome it is for the patient. So this is a cardiac arrest, so the police are en route, fire is en route, and we're en route, all just trying to get there first, and then immediately start compression, start CPR. So yeah, anyways, I get to the scene. We were zooming, and we actually beat fire to the scene. Police did get to the scene before us, and jump bags have all the material we need in it, all the medicine, the supplies, all the material we need in it. We beat fire to the scene. We throw everything we have on a stretcher. We throw on our jump bag. We throw on our Lucas, which is basically a device that does CPR for you. We just throw on our suction. We throw on everything we could possibly need for a cardiac arrest. We throw on our bat board. Everything we need on a stretcher, super fast. We take it off. We take it out the back of the ambulance, and we run inside. The police are inside, and here's the thing. Cardiac arrest, you're supposed to immediately start CPR once you're confirmed they're in cardiac arrest. So I walk inside, and I just see the police standing there with their arms crossed like this. I'm like, what's going on? Why is the police not doing CPR? Because, again, we thought it was going to be a cardiac arrest, and we were going to the scene, me, the medic, the firefighters. And anyway, so I get in there, and I'm the first one in. My paramedic's my partner's right behind me. But I get in there, and I see a kid. Bystanders around, just doing bystander stuff, crying, making noise, talking. Police are just standing there. I do see the kid seizing, but I see their breathing, so I'm like, okay. They're not in cardiac arrest right now, so that's good. You don't necessarily know everything about the call when you're going in, so things could change very quickly. In this case, we thought it was going to be a cardiac arrest, the craziest call of all time. Thankfully, when we get on scene, the patient is not in cardiac arrest. They were just in an active seizure at that moment. We let the patient finish seizing, and then sure enough, fire is like literally like 30 seconds to a minute after us. But fire, they see it, they run in, you know, thinking it's a cardiac arrest, full speed, just like ready to work this cardiac arrest, you know. Thankfully, they get there, they see it's a seizure too, and I could tell that the tensions have gone down among their crew too. And it's a cardiac arrest, everybody's just like, you know, they're alert, they're dialed, they're locked in. At the end of the day, the patient did stop seizing. We got a little bit of history from we got a little bit of the patient's history from the bystanders. Got a little bit more information to help us make a potential diagnosis, but we take the patient to the hospital. They don't seize en route to the hospital. You know, the paramedic continued care in the back. I drove to the hospital, and at the end of the day, patient made it alive. It was a fake out cardiac arrest. The patient was all right, thankfully, and yeah. But that was something. That was a moment that will like be burned in my mind forever. Just, you know, my first time ever thinking, oh my god, it's gonna be a cardiac arrest. It's a child in this cardiac arrest. It felt, that 1 minute felt like 10 minutes, because just time slowed down so much, just trying to take in the scene, figure out everything that's going on, figure out my next course of actions, and stuff like that. So it was just crazy, but that's one of those moments that will stick with me forever. My first fake out cardiac arrest on a kid. But thankfully it was not a cardiac arrest. Thankful the patient recovered and was doing much better by the time we dropped them off at the hospital. So yes. This call was a 911 call, except instead of having a paramedic with me, it was just me and another basic EMT. And if you know anything about EMS in particular, I'm gonna make a whole video explaining the differences between an EMT and a paramedic, but basically it's me and another basic EMTs. In a real emergency, all we could do is provide oxygen, basic airway maneuvers, and basic life support. So, and of course CPR, first aid, as I said, is up to your discretion if you want to use lights or sirens on this call. We decide, you know what, we're gonna go lights and sirens. Patient passed out, older patient, so we're like, you know what, let's just be safe, rather safe than sorry. So we go lights and sirens, and we get to the location of the patient. Anyways, this patient had been getting their hair done. I'm in charge. This is already designated before we went there as my call. So I'm like, okay. We get to the scene, and we unload the stretcher, and we make patient contact. When we make patient contact, I see that this patient is breathing, but it's kind of slow breathing. They're unconscious. They're not responding to me calling their name. They're not responding to shaking them. They're not responding to a painful stimuli, like pinching them. No response at all. So like, we tried to take a blood pressure, tried to take SpO2. Blood pressure cuff was not reading. Their SpO2 sensor, when it checks your oxygen saturation, it read 84%. Like, that's not good. We immediately grab out a non-rebreather mask, which is one of those masks you see in the movies that drop down for the planes. Grab on a non-rebreather. We put them on a non-rebreather mask, so that try to increase their oxygen that's getting into their body. And we're just like, we request ALS, advanced life support, because, you know, we're double basics. We can't really do much more besides give them oxygen in this case, and, you know, try to get them to the hospital as fast as possible. Anyways, the ALS requests, they're like, oh yeah, we're like 10 minutes out, and we're like, we're not waiting 10 minutes with this, like, with the condition that this patient's in. We're not waiting 10 minutes. We don't know why they're unconscious, and we're not able to get a full set of vitals right now. We know what we're just gonna go. Our patient's unconscious. Me and my partner, we just lift up the patient. Literally, I grab the feet, he grabs them under their shoulders. We put him on a stretcher, and we just immediately take him out as fast as possible. We're like, we're going to this hospital, and we just lights and sirens it to the hospital. And we just lights and sirens to the hospital. We're zooming to the hospital. I'm still trying to get a blood pressure while trying to call in a report to the hospital. Mind you, this is my first 911 call that I'm taking myself. And I'm like, like, the pressure's on. Like, I'm trying to care for the patient. I'm trying to do everything I can. I'm trying to get a glucose test. I'm trying to run a glucose test. I'm trying to call the hospital. I'm trying to get a blood pressure. I'm just trying to do everything at once. But, they send us to one of the rooms where they're immediately ready to work on the patient when you get there. So we get to the hospital. We're taking that to the hospital. The blood pressure cuff is an automatic cuff, but it's running as we're taking into the thing. And when we finally get a blood pressure, like, when we're like 30 seconds away from bed, and we get the blood pressure, guess what it was before I tell you? The average blood pressure should be 120 to 120 over 80, just so you can guess. The blood pressure we get was 50 over 40. Yeah, that's not supposed to be like that. So, anyways, I'm like, okay. So anyways, we told him we just got the blood pressure 50 over 40. SpO2 was in the 80s. Put him on a non-rebreather. That went up a little bit, thankfully. But anyways, we get in there and they immediately start a line. They start trying to give fluids, and the doctors, nurses, PAs, they get to work on this patient. And at the end of the day, we never got an actual official diagnosis. Based on the presentation, we're guessing that the patient had a severe stroke, and rather than being asleep, they were passed out from that stroke. We did notice, I forgot to mention this earlier in the story, but on scene we did notice a little bit of facial droop. They were unconscious. One side of their face looked, that's a symptom of stroke, but one side of their face was like that compared to the other one. So that was one of the symptoms, like could be a stroke. And along with that, apparently 15 minutes before we had gotten there, they were awake, they were talking, they were just, still normal. And then all of a sudden, they're completely unconscious, not responding to pain, not responding to touch, not responding to any of this. And that, for it to be that quick and that severe, obviously they're not sleeping. We're thinking it was a stroke. I took their blood glucose while we were driving. That came back normally. And so all those symptoms led us to believe it was most likely a stroke. I hope they are alive. I actually was praying for them that night, and I pray for most of my patients that I take in and just help them be doing better, help them recover, help them heal. But that was that one. That was my first 911 call that I took myself. Of course, that was still in my craziest 3 calls I've ever taken, especially for it being double basic. And I kid you not, by the time we got to the hospital, the advanced life support we had requested made it to the hospital after we had already dropped them off in the room, which I was like, I'm glad we just took them straight here, because especially after seeing that blood pressure, I was like, we did not want to be waiting around on the scene for that. But yeah, that was something. The final call for this story, my third most crazy call. But this one was my first actual cardiac arrest. We had a different call at first. It was just someone that had nausea, they had been throwing up, and that was our original call. But all of a sudden over the radio I hear, copy a higher priority call, and I'm like, go ahead. And then they tell us their higher priority call. You're just like, you have a patient unconscious, not responding, and unconscious, not responding, and that's all we got at first. And we're just like, go there instead, put it in the GPS. We start heading there. As we're heading there, we're around halfway there. Over the radio they say, your call has been upgraded to a cardiac arrest. So I'm like, that's when the adrenaline starts kicking in again. I'm like, it's time to lock in. So the paramedic I'm with, I'm like, this is my first cardiac arrest. He's chilling. He's like, don't worry about it. Fire's gonna be there. We get through it. Just follow our lead. So anyways, we get there. There's 2 fire engines already on scene, already working this arrest. So yeah, we get in there. We take out the stretcher. We take out the bat board. We take out a couple more supplies that we need. We take out our AED, other supplies our Lucas, other supplies we need for this cardiac arrest, and we just get to work immediately. Fire had already been on the scene. They had already started IVs. They had already they had been doing physical compressions. They'd already done a couple other things on scene too. They had already put on some pads to defibrillate them. So when I get on scene, we have a Lucas machine, which is basically a machine that does CPR compressions for you. It's more accurate, more consistent than the average human's compressions that you're doing manually, But this Lucas machine, it's a machine that does it for you on the exact rhythm it's supposed to be on and all this stuff. So I throw on the Lucas machine. Firefighter that was doing physical compressions now is freed up to do other stuff. And at this point, I think we have 8 or 9 people on scene working this cardiac arrest. The paramedics are leading the call. They're pushing medications. They're calling when we're checking rhythms, and they are telling us when we're defibrillating, all this stuff. So I'm more, because we had so many paramedics on scene and advanced EMTs, I'm really, and this is my first call, my first cardiac arrest, I'm like helping out, I'm passing them. Oh, they need this? I got you. You need me to move this here? You need me to put this here? I got you. Anyways, so I'm a sponge soaking up knowledge, figuring out, watching exactly how they do it in my first, real, I've seen, of course, simulations, but it's my first time watching it in person and actually seeing, oh, this is what we do here, this is what we don't do here, and all this stuff. But anyways, we worked the call on scene, and they push all the medications they could push on scene, and they're like, all right, we're gonna get ready to transport them. You know me, the firefighters, we load them onto the backboard, lift the Lucas machine still going, and we take the backboard to the stretcher to the ambulance, and you know, they're sitting back in the ambulance. We got the 2 paramedics still in the back working it. I'm gonna be driving to the hospital, but drive to the hospital emergently. I get to the hospital, you know, we go into the trauma bay, where, you know, we get in there, and, you know, we got the whole team of doctors, nurses, everybody waiting on standby, because, you know, we just had a cardiac arrest, and, you know, they're ready to, like, get to work on the cardiac arrest in the hospital setting. We did as much as we could on scene, which is what you learn, and then, you know, the hospital has a little bit more stuff they could do. They have, like, they had a cardiologist and all this stuff, too, to check the heart when we get there, but we get there, they work for a couple minutes, our cardiologist checks the heart, and at the end of the day, they did call it, and that was my first and only patient that has ever, they died technically before we got there, but that's the first time that I ever had a patient that didn't make it, on the call, and, I don't know, it was something, yeah, I learned a lot on that day, but, I mean, still, it's one of those other memories that'll just, like, every single one of these calls, I can remember the exact patient face, the people, the bystanders on scene, I can remember their faces, I can remember the sounds, and it's just one of those things that will definitely stick with me for the rest of it, for the rest of my career. And yeah, I learned a lot from all of these calls, and I'll continue to learn more in the future. This is from my EMS career, but preparing me for my career as a PA and all this other stuff. And I'll see more crazy stuff, more this stuff in general. But those, when people ask my craziest 3 calls, that's it. All of them, you know, I did the best of my abilities on every single call. My partners, firefighters, all of us did the best we could on every single one of the calls we've gone on. But, you know, we live, we learn, and I hope you learned a little bit from the story time too. Not just like, oh, this crazy thing happened, but maybe in the future, like when I was talking about stroke symptoms, where, you know, her face was drooping and stuff like that. I hope y'all are able to learn a little bit of something, learn about a little bit of crazy stuff in the EMS. And again, this is a pretty, like, to an average person, these stories sound crazy, but then to the average person that works in EMS, this is a pretty average day, or like a pretty average week of calls. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, so just keep that in mind for perspective. I am a white cloud. I don't get the crazy, like, I've never got a gunshot. People ask, like, oh, have you seen someone get shot? Never got a gunshot. I've had a couple car crashes, but no crazy car crashes. Yeah, it's just the reality of my first 6 months on the job so far, and at the end of the day, just do pray for my patients, pray for their families, pray for the outcomes, and yeah, pray for my coworkers. That, you know, you see a lot in the field, so I pray that from their mental health to the health of their family and friends, you know, that they stay healthy, they stay safe, and that their mental health, you know, that God just watches over them and protects us all in the field. But yeah, that's my 3 craziest calls so far in my first 6 months. Hope you guys learned something. Hope you guys. And yeah, that's about the craziest calls I've had. I've had a lot of other calls, a lot of other stories too. I'm sure I could talk about it in the future. But yeah, that's about it.